This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Key questions Michigan must answer with spring football practice about to begin. Next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Carter. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
They said you can't beat Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Colliger at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Second. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to another edition of Michigan Podcast, and spring football gets underway this week for our beloved Michigan Wolverines. And I think there are 5 key questions that the Wolverines have to answer between now and the spring game on April the 20th, heading into the spring portal window. Let's count them down from 5 to 1. Let's begin with number 5, and don't laugh at me. I'm sensitive. I know what you're thinking, but we need to find out if we have a punter on campus, because I don't know that we do. Yes, Steve. I know we're not Iowa. Even though I've been telling you for years, we're kind of Iowa with a bigger stadium and more money. We play very similar styles of football. We play a complementary brand of football. Field position, therefore, is a key component. And Michigan's special teams have been among the nation's best most of the Harbaugh era. In terms of return men, we're going to be fine. And in terms of kicker, we're going to be excellent. But punter, the ability to flip the field, especially because we're going to probably see some inconsistencies with this offense and the young quarterback or the new transfer quarterback, with maybe a great drive each quarter, and then the next 2 drives you're 3 and out, and you need that punter. While guys are still figuring out that chemistry is still building, you need that punter that can flip the field. We don't have that punter on campus right now, I think. And getting that guy in the spring portal window could be vital. That is a sneaky important position given the style of football that we play. Number 4 of their top 5 questions Michigan's got to answer during spring ball. What exactly is the Chip Lindsey offense at Michigan going to be? So if you haven't heard Chip Lindsey's interview with John Jansen on the University of Michigan's official podcast network, I would urge you to go back and listen to it. He said a couple of very fascinating things. Chip did. He talked about his background is as a high school coach. And when you're a high school coach, it's really hard to impose a specific scheme on your players, right? Guys make radical developments and improvements in the span of 1 year between 15 and 16 and 16 and 17 and 17 and 18. Can also be very transient. Group of guys plays 1 year, not the other. So a lot of times you had to learn just to take your best 11 on offense, size it up, and come up with an offense that collectively they're the best at. And I think this is maybe what he has brought into Michigan to do here. I think we have an identity here. I think we have a style here. And I think we have a philosophy here. This isn't just Josh Gaddis brought in to alter that philosophy at all. I think Chip is being brought in to fit into that philosophy. but to do so also by adding 2 tools to our toolkit that have been lacking in the Harbaugh era, and speak to his background, because he's done everything from air raid to Gus Malzahn, and that's number one. I mean, the comparison of Bryce Underwood to Cam Newton is everywhere among the college, football recruiting, analysts. But Elliott at 24/7 Sports, for example, said the closest thing he's seen to Cam Newton since Cam Newton is Bryce Underwood. So QB run game has not been something we've been really good at. We did it sparingly to kind of throw you off under JJ, but other than that, a lot of bluff run where it's not really a zone read. And I don't think we're going to be running Bryce Underwood 20 times a game, but I think teams have to think that we might. And I just don't think QB run game is just something you can kind of throw in. Yeah, sure. When you add Shea Patterson, you do that bluff run. You tell him to keep it once against Wisconsin, he goes 80 yards. So maybe once a game, you can catch a team napping and giving up a soft edge there and have the quarterback keep that ball and, run to daylight. But week to week, if you want to be effective at it, I think week to week teams have to think you're actually going to run it. And so I think being consistent in that area and have being able to execute in that area, because you don't want to expose Bryce Underwood to being hit 10, 15 times a game. But you might want to think, you need a defense to think that this might be the week that you're going to do it. And if they think that gives you the consistent numbers in the running game that are to your advantage than when they know it's just a gimmick and not something that you really have in your repertoire. And so I think Chip is here for that, number one. And then number two, RPO. And this is just something that, Gaddis tried to install. We never really, I don't think Jimmy ever truly bought into it, even though basically it's like the perfect scheme for a Shea Patterson style quarterback. And that's also inherent to what Chip Lindsey has run in the past. So I think adding RPO, which simplifies the progressions and the reads for a young quarterback. And yes, I know we brought in Mikey Keene, but I think that Michigan would prefer that Bryce Underwood starts at quarterback week 1 at the end of August. So we make QB run game a consistent element. So that keeps defenses on their heels, uncomplicates them schematically because they have to account for his number in the box. And then you have an RPO element where you've essentially shrunk the field into really just 3 reads, and they happen instantaneously for a quarterback. If we've got the numbers in the box, if it's a light box, hand it off. If we don't, then make the decision based on your keys with, that guy, over the top there at linebacker or in the box safety. If he's not cheating in, you keep it and run it. If he is, you hit him down the stream over their head, trying to simplify as many progressions as possible to set the stage for Bryce Underwood to be the starting quarterback. Now, that brings us to number 3. Are there any playmakers at wide receiver? Now, hey, this is Michigan. Wide receiver is just not a premium position here like it was when we were growing up. And we'd have Steve Breston, Jason Avant, and Braylon Edwards in the exact same receiving corps. Or Greg McMurtry and Chris Callaway in the exact same receiving corps when I was a really young pup. We don't have that right now. We're working on that, particularly in the 26 class. But that's just not who we are. And we won a national championship that way. But there's at least got to be a Roman Wilson. There's got to be somebody that on a down-to-down basis you think could take the top off of a defense. And so you have to respect that to, again, give you better numbers in the box because you want to smash, right? And so someone has to emerge. Doesn't have to be a 100-catch guy, but it has to be somebody that on a given play you think if we just completely disabuse ourselves of the notion that Michigan's going to throw the ball, they'll punish us, they'll hurt us, right? And we don't have that guy right now, or that guy has not yet presented themselves, perhaps because of how anemically difficult and terrible our quarterback play was a year ago. All right, number 2. Will Grant Newsome take a step forward as offensive line coach? I know most people in the Michigan media sphere are saying, will the offensive line take a step forward? I want to know if the coach is, because the quality of not just the quality of talent. I mean, we lost our top 6 guys to the NFL. That's a lot of drainage from one position, particularly one that takes years to develop like the offensive line. But just the level of polished self-awareness, technique, really dropped off last year. And then at the end, we got a stalemate against Ohio State, which, given how terrific that defensive front is, you'll take that as a dub. And then we even got some movement against Alabama with the 2 young tackles in there, Evan Link and Sprague together. So were those flashes in the pan? Did Grant Newsome figure something out? it's very clear Michigan wants Grant Newsome to be the next big thing in the coaching ranks, or thinks he has the talent to be. But what happened last year was just a colossal disappointment. The caliber of coaching from Sharon Moore coaching that position to Grant Newsome dropped precipitously. And so I think Grant Newsome has to take a step forward. They have an analyst in this year, former UCLA offensive line coach Juan Castillo, who's been at Michigan before. So maybe he's kind of your in case of emergency break glass alternative there. But I think the offensive line coach, even more so than the offensive line itself, has to take a step forward this year. And that brings us to number one. Is Bryce Young ready for prime time? I think it's at least 50-50 that Bryce is going to start week one. At least. I think Michigan wants Bryce Underwood to start week one. I think they want him to get a game in before they go to Oklahoma. I think that they see him as the player that raises the ceiling of the program considerably, given his talent and skill set. And Michigan's correct if he's ready. So that's why I think it's key to get a spring game. I mean, it's not like his stats are going to dictate how he's going to play in the fall, but to see his presence there's going to be a lot. I mean, that could very well be the most attended Michigan spring game in memory, going back to like Jimmy's first year. It's late April. The weather should be okay. It's Bryce Underwood, the local kid, the number one recruit in the country, the number one quarterback recruit since Trevor Lawrence. I mean, see how it looks, how he commands a huddle, what his presence on the field is. Because I think Michigan wants him to be ready for prime time, but you also can't serve a wine before it's time. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Let's find out. Get a more jaundiced, scarlet, and gray view of things from our good friend Mark Rogers, maybe the world's only sane bucknut. Next. Well, let's find out what our favorite Buckeye thinks. Good to talk to Mark Rogers, voice of college football, is his channel here on YouTube that just does a fantastic job covering the greatest sport in the world year-round. They've got correspondents and stringers and reporters from teams across the country. So much great, particularly during the offseason, information you don't find anywhere else. And then when he's tired of being taken seriously, Mark reverts back to being a Buckeye fan, a fellow Bucknut there. Mark, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing very well. We've got spring here in the Midwest, finally. The snow is gone, so ready for the warm-up. We're under, what now, about 200 days, about 150 days, actually, I think, to the college football season starts thereabouts. So let's crank it out, Mark. I presented what I think are the 5 big questions Michigan football has to answer during the spring. I know people are going to laugh at the punter one, but like I explained in the open, when you play complementary style of football, as we do, that's inherent to the way we play football. Field position matters quite a bit, and there's a big difference asking teams to, start the ball on the 20-yard line and go 80 yards against our defense than starting at the 40 and going 60 yards. So I'm not confident we've got a punter yet that can consistently flip the field in ways we're accustomed to at Michigan. So I'll table that one so you don't have to do any punter talk with us, okay? And the other 4 questions that I referenced here at the top, which one stood out the most to you?
Well, I will address the special teams just in this one broad way that our friends at the University of Iowa, of course, have mastered defense and special teams. And it seems like whatever punter they grab, Torrey Taylor being the best and the preeminent example, but his successor just as good. And the special teams, if you've got the coach in place and you know what you want, and this JB Brown that you have as the special teams coordinator, who's also been an analyst in special teams and across the board since 2021. So we're looking at a 5th season of JB Brown being in the program. I think there's something about culture that goes directly with special teams, maybe more than the other 2 units, that there's something inherent there that maybe Michigan's grabbed a hold of that is going to partially ensure that the special teams are at least going to be respectable, if not outstanding. So that's a good indicator, I think, for the special teams coming up. Chip Lindsey's obviously the guy that's in question. And Sharon Moore had made a statement about Chip Lindsey when he introduced him where you hear a lot of offensive coordinators being introduced as a guy that he is going to come in and he's going to revamp some things. He's going to install this or that, or he's going to show kind of a different way. But Sharon Moore used the term alignment and got a little bit more specific than that. But that was the term that I grabbed hold of in being, okay, we got a hold of a guy that can be a Michigan offensive coordinator. And certainly, if you look at Michigan fans, if you want to get excited about Chip Lindsey's offense and it melding with the Michigan philosophy better than what you saw with Josh Gaddis, where, of course, that just didn't work, go to the 2020 North Carolina-Miami game. Find that on YouTube, and you will just love to see Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, two excellent running backs who moved on to the NFL from the Chip Lindsey offense, rack up something like, this was the most devastating rushing performance I've ever seen against a major college football team. Not a great defense by any stretch, but a talented defense. They ran for like 620 yards in that game with Sam Howell at quarterback, who only had to throw like 15 passes, 17 passes, something like that. So I am going to be interested to see Chip Lindsey put this together with Michigan personnel, but I think it's a good indicator of what he can do and what he likes to do. And that's not necessarily be heavy on either side of the pass run equation, but be very balanced. And, the wide receiver spot was also something that you brought up. And I'm looking at Michigan's array of talent, or some would say lack thereof. And I know Donovan McCulley, I watched some highlights of him and saw him a little bit at Indiana where he got some decent playing time. And he seems to be a bit of a red zone specialist, can really pluck the ball out of the air, outfight a one-on-one situation. They throw him a lot of fades, or they did at Indiana. Samaj Morgan, Frederick Moore, they strike me in their limited time. Of course, Samaj Morgan was a little bit more featured, but as kind of gadget guys, and certainly if I'm speaking out of turn on my evaluation of Michigan's guys, because it's been a few months since I've seen Michigan, and we didn't really get to see them throw the ball. So maybe I'm going back to 2024 or 23 on a lot of these evaluations. And then the Andrew Marsh coming into the program, Amarian Walker, who's supposed to be a bit of a freak athlete. If they fulfill their potential, maybe you have a semblance of filling all those various wide receiver roles that most teams look for in not just acquiring talent, but having, your burner, your red zone guy, your gadget guys, your Julian Edelman underneath, Adam Humphrey, Hunter Renfrow guys that really trick it, that are just uncoverable inside about 8 yards. And maybe you have a poor man's semblance of a wide receiver core from a skill standpoint.
Like I said in the top before you came on, Mark, one of the things I'm fascinated by with Chip Lindsey is it's not your typical OC hire, in that usually a guy is brought in because he is from the ideological tree that you've already established in your program and you want that continuity, or you are trying to reinvent schematically your offense. And that's what Josh Gaddis was brought here to do with speed and space. All right. In this case, Lindsey, and I heard Lindsey say this, in his interview with John Jansen on the University of Michigan's official podcast feed, he's a high school coach. And so he's not really ideologically committed to a scheme. You learn as a high school coach, the players grow and mature at a rapid rate at that age. It's they're there 1 year, not the next. So you literally have to assess the players you have on that team, who are my 11 best guys on offense, and then what collectively do they do the best and fit something around them. And so I don't think he was brought here to bring a scheme. I don't. I think that's what Sharon Moore is talking about. That he kind of fits in to their philosophical mindset. He's worked in air raids. He's worked primarily with Gus Malzahn. And see, I think that's ultimately why he was brought here. In a way, I think it's because he has a couple of specialities that Michigan wants to emphasize that its current coaching staff has not indicated they're capable of. Number one, the Gus Malzahn influence and the running quarterback. If you look at everybody from the scouts at 24/7 Sports, like Bud Elliott and others, I mean, I've heard Bud Elliott say on more than one occasion, the closest thing to Cam Newton he has seen since Cam Newton is Bryce Underwood. And so Michigan's just never been a program that relied heavily, other than the Denard Robinson years, but did not rely heavily on the QB run game. And I know that seems like to you and I just a few years ago. I mean, it was going on 15 years ago. That's if you're a high school prospect in the 27 class, that's like, the year you were born. Okay. And so the QB run game is just not a staple of Michigan's program. It was something that J.J. McCarthy could do and was very athletic, but they were hesitant to have him do on a regular basis once he became the starter because of the drop off at backup. So that's not something I don't think you can make QB run game a bug in your offense. I think it has to be a feature. It doesn't mean you have to do it 20 times a game, but teams have, I think, to truly get the effect out of it that you want. Teams have got to assume that at any point in time, you can go to that so that you've always got numbers in the box in your favor when you go to run the football. I think just, all right, hey, you know what? Like we did with Shea Patterson, for example, you guys jump the run enough. And so like one time against Wisconsin, Shea keep it and run for 80 yards and never do it again. Week to week, you might have a moment like that, but you can't make it consistently a successful thing in your offense unless it's consistently a successful thing in your offense. So I think he was brought here for that, because that also greatly diminishes Bryce Underwood's learning curve right from the jump as a freshman. If that becomes a consistent weapon, the more he can use his legs, the less you're asking him to read defenses, because the more simple things get. And that gets to number two. RPO Jimmy just wasn't into RPO at all. Just not his era, not what he does. Just never really bought into it, never really did it. And Chip Lindsey, the one constant between air raid offenses he's worked in and Gus Malzahn's offense is RPO. And that, again, gives a freshman quarterback a simpler read, right? Hey, if you got numbers in the box, run the ball. If we don't, then read the linebacker. And if he jumps you thinking you're keeping it, then throw it down the seam over his head. That's just very simple process of reading a defense when you've got those simple keys there with an RPO. And it's just not something that we've ever been good at or been successful at. And so I think Lindsey was really brought here to bring a couple of elements into our offense more than a scheme that you can add to any scheme, but we've just not been successful at doing so.
It also sounds like the way you present Chip Lindsey's flexibility, that bodes well in what could be a transition of quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. So if Mikey Keene's the starter or Davis Warren's able to hang on to the position to start the season, but Bryce Underwood is ready by game 4 or 5, then that transition won't be as difficult to make from one very different skill set quarterback to the next with Chip Lindsey. And that's going to be a fascinating portion of all this. I have to think that maybe outside of the Michigan camp, that for the rest of us college football people, that seeing if Bryce Underwood's actually going to be given the keys from day one, which will lend us to believe that he just simply showed enough that he was not going to consistently make the big mistake, could actually do some of the simple things to read some of the keys that he needs to in the offense that he's going to be given, because I think that they should lean in that direction to try to get him ready for week 1 and just go with it from week 1 with Bryce Underwood.
I think it's at best 50-50 between Bryce Underwood and Mikey Keene. I think if it's anything close at all, Bryce Underwood will be the starter. I mean, Davis Warren is going to recover from that ACL, so who knows when he's even available. But you didn't pay Bryce Underwood all that money to sit on the bench. So I'm reminded of the first true freshman that ever started a game at quarterback for Michigan was the great Rick Leach, who should be in the College Football Hall of Fame, by the way. It's a travesty. I mean, you're talking about a guy that for 25 years owned the career touchdown record in college football. How that's not worthy of Was a Silver Football Award winner, had the quarterback 3 straight Rose Bowl teams. How he's not, was a top 5 finisher for the Heisman Trophy. I know I'm off on a tangent here, but how in the world Rick Leach is not in the College Football Hall of Fame is beyond me. But he was the first true freshman to throw a pass to start a game at quarterback for Michigan. And Bo, back in that time, just made it pretty simple. I mean, if it's this close between the big-time recruit and the guys who've been in the program for 3 years right now, by the end of the year, he's going to be way better than these guys. So let's take the lumps now and get it over with. And they did. I mean, that team had 2 or 3 ties in September, and then by the end of the year was playing Ohio State for the Big Ten championship again. So I think if it's close, Bryce Underwood would be the starter. I think what we don't understand and won't see until the spring is just really how close it is, which brings me to something I wanted to ask you about. Michigan is zigging while everybody else is zagging here. And Clemson's now in this group too. Now, a lot of schools getting rid of the spring games, claiming it's because they don't want to put their players out there. That reserve guys that they can't afford big deals for in NIL, and worried about those guys getting poached in the spring transfer portal. Dabo Swinney's never been a transfer portal guy anyway, so I think he's kind of the coach. If you want to go to the portal, that just means we don't want you. But Sharon's more of a new school guy, and he's been like, I want game situations. I want to build depth. His attitude essentially is, I guess if you want to come in here and try to outbid us, good luck. So maybe you get to have that opinion at Michigan. Maybe some other schools, they don't have that kind of funding. They can't. But what do you think of this trend of dumping spring games we're seeing right now?
Well, I think it's one of the indicators of what's wrong with our sport is that the schools and the conferences run the sport, and there's no one to run the sport like a commissioner or a governing body. And again, I just think that the COVID year was just such a great test case to show us exactly where this sport stands. Mm-hmm. And therefore, hey, if I'm the commissioner of college football, everybody's playing a spring game. It's just a mandate, just like it is for the coaches and the players to appear before the media after the game. We can fill in all the blanks of all the requirements of coaches and players, and this would be one. You play a spring game. Why? Not basically, we've got how many college football fans or families, a family of 5, 3 kids, and 2 parents that cannot go to a college football game in the fall, and it's a mini vacation for them. It's a $600 or $800 trip minimum. So, super cheap or free. How about that? A free spring game with all the festivities of everything else that can go on over the weekend. And I know in the South, from covering the SEC for 7 years, that became a baseball weekend in addition to the spring game. Families would come in, they go to the baseball game on Friday night, they go to the spring game Saturday afternoon, another baseball game on Saturday night. Of course, softball's become much more prevalent and popular in recent years. So it became like an all sports weekend. And I just think that that's just a slap in the face to families that want to come in and, be able to get into the stadium and watch a game. I know it's not a game. It's not much of real football entertainment, but, and then there are meet and greet type festivities that a lot of these schools have around the game to meet and mingle with the players on the field and all of that. That should be for the fans, and it should be preserved, and somebody should mandate that.
Amen. All right, before we let you go, give us some enemy intel. You guys' situation sounds vaguely familiar to me. Lose both coordinators off a national championship team, lose your starting quarterback, have to come in with an unproven quarterback, have the most guys at the NFL Combine drafted, be at the bottom of Bill Connolly's returning production ratings. I've seen that movie before. Now you guys are starting over at quarterback with a higher level prospect than we had as Davis Warren compared to Julian Sayin, of course, but otherwise, a lot of other similarities. 3 or 4 high-end All-American caliber players. We had the same thing. Right? We're going to have 4 guys picked in the first round of the draft, but behind them, a lot of unproven players and unproven depth. It's very, very similar, except for the head coach. But even in that situation, the guy that took over had been the head coach in several of our most crucial games, So it does seem almost, it looked like a year ago, Ohio State emulated our formula, get the second star running back, go all in, bring back all the second or third day draft picks, empty the wallet, the checkbook. We did the same thing. Go win the Natty. All right. and then have to replace all that. The scripts look very, very similar. So what are you looking for on your side of things in spring ball, Mark?
Well, there's no veteran quarterback presence to back up any of these hot shots, and Julian Sayin is probably going to be the guy. He's expected to win the job, but there's no experience behind him. So Ohio State's really going out on a limb from that standpoint to not only not go get a transfer portal quarterback to be the starter, but not have any veteran depth behind the starter. So, of course, Julian Sayin's the guy in the hot seat in regards to his evaluation. I also think that the running back situation's precarious. There's not much experience there. They lose the two studs to the NFL, and James Peoples and others are going to vie for the position. They got C.J. Donaldson, nice running back, decent running back from West Virginia, played well in the Big 12, but he's not Quinshon Judkins or Travion Henderson. So it's going to be a running back by committee. They have a few guys that are more gadget type, Curtis Samuel type players that can be both slot receiver and running back as well. So it's going to be a very different offense. I think the defense is going to be nearly as good. They're going to be in that range. They've got their linebackers coming back. Yes, the defensive front is revamped, and the secondary play. Caleb Downs is leading the defense on that side. Of course, Jim Knowles is gone. I was not a huge proponent of the Matt Patricia hiring. I'm not going to say that he's going to fail. I just think that there had to be better options out there. So you lose one of the game's best defensive coordinators to a chief rival. That's not a good thing, but they're not lacking for talent, but it's not proven talent in very many areas outside of second and third levels on defense, wide receiver. That's their proven talent. And for the first time in a while, actually, some offensive line starters coming back that are decent players.
Good to talk to you as always, Mark. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet. This week's X-Poll results, we asked you, which NCAA tournament seed do you think Michigan deserves? Very divided opinions here. 37% of you think we're getting a 7 seed on Sunday. I think if we lose on Friday to Purdue, we will. 32% of you say a 6 seed. 24% said a 5. 8% said a 4. Keep hope alive. I don't see the justification for a 4 seed at all unless we get to the conference tournament championship game, but I like the optimism. That brings us to our feedback of the week. JES says Trey Donaldson's been extremely unimpressive all year, just panics too much and forces things. He has not been unimpressive all year. Trey was very good to start the year. Trey was good at the beginning of the Big Ten season. I think what has happened as time has gone on is the scout is out. And now that teams have figured out at least how to get a stalemate against that 4-5 pick and roll, Trey Donaldson has been asked now to step forward and be more of a true alpha as the point guard. And that's just not who he is. He's just not a guy that can lead a program right now. And so I think down the stretch, you've seen him falter in the moment quite a bit, and Michigan has faltered as a result quite a bit too. You can't, and then he allowed himself to get punked against Michigan State. You had a Michigan State player come in, talk smack, spit in his face, and he just kind of looked at him and wandered off before the game, and then went around and before the first TV timeout had 3 turnovers and an air ball, and just couldn't get rid of the basketball fast enough the rest of the game. You can't do that. We learned in football this year, you can't hide your quarterback. You can in college basketball, you cannot have a point guard who is punked. And Trey Donaldson is punked right now. And if they can't reverse that, they won't win another game. If they can, well, then they could win a lot more games. Because this is still a team that is very talented, and you still have a very difficult matchup on short scouts and short rests with that 4-5 pick and roll. But it's Trey Donaldson's going to determine how much more basketball we're going to watch here in the month of March. Because he's been the reason you've watched some pretty crappy basketball here at the beginning of March. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, follow, help us to find more Michigan fans just like you. Thank you for all the comments here on YouTube as well. Please keep those going. Whether that's not just YouTube, but on iTunes and elsewhere as well. We'll be back again next week with a look at Michigan's draw in the bracket and our annual tips on how to win your NCAA tournament pool. Until then, don't forget to follow us on X at Michigan Podcast, on X at Michigan Podcast there. I'm Steve Deace. We'll see you next week. Go Blue.